guys, welcome to OCD Real Talk. What like third in this week? What's going on?
I know, right? Seriously, you're on a roll, man.
Yeah, this is too much. I brought a special scarf for this one.
Just about to comment on your scarf. I just was about to comment on it.
But yeah, what was I going to say? I was going to say that we're today going to talk about the negative impact that OCD has on a sufferer's life, and this is not to come from an angle of just making everyone sad and depressed over here, because we obviously we I think we will naturally touch upon what's important to do to kind of like bounce back from that negative impact. But we just want to highlight how it is realistically on a day-to-day basis and why this disorder is hard. I mean, it is. I mean, we like when we talk about rational thinking and acceptance, we don't mean to diminish like the suffering part of it. It is a difficult disorder. But obviously there are ways that you can slowly but surely get your life back. So yeah. Do you want to start?
Yeah, so I think a good thing to talk about is, and I'll use examples for myself. I've been trying in the last year or so to use as many. I heard a great quote by someone who's really big in a certain sector in the world, in economics, and he said that
That that was such a vague description. I am going to quote a human being from a certain country who is of a certain sex and has a certain family.
it's so funny. The more that we do this, I'll like be speaking and I'll be like, wow, I can't believe how much more introspective I am. I almost sound like Rob, and I need to be dumber than Rob. I need so, but no, it is territory of the recovery process. But so this
Mm.
guy basically said, if you can't explain your point of view to a 3-year-old, you probably can't explain it as well as you think, because most people can't speak at the level that you're knowing it.
Yeah.
So it's like when you're tired with OCD, if you're someone who doesn't have OCD and you worked a long day and you have kids, your level of tired is probably like wearing a 10-pound weighted vest or a 5 kilogram. When you have OCD, that has gone up 20-fold.
Yeah.
It's like 100-kilogram weighted vest. That's in the way you move your feet, the way you just drag yourself around. Like you're not skipping. You're just like,
Yeah.
you're very mopey. Mopey would be the best word to describe it. Erica would be like, you're very mopey. And what affected me the most, which I think a lot of people with similar personality traits to me, like they want to go, go, go and do all the things. And, then when that takes that away from you, you can really start having this almost identity crisis where you're like, and then people notice it. So if someone's more of like their personality traits are based more along in maybe a more balanced, mellow way, they might be able to hide it more. I know for me, because I was so hyper, everyone I knew, it did not matter how well they knew me, I mean, I heard this 100 times. What's wrong with you? Something is wrong with you. You are off. You are off. And then I would have this extra pressure to fake it. And
Yeah.
I would be like, oh, I'm great. And then they
I
would be
was
like,
the opposite. I was the opposite. Like in general, as a personality, I've always been a very balanced personality. And so like I think if people watch my videos that I've done on the channel, they will feel like I'm lying. They will literally think like people that know me personally in my life, they think I'm lying because they don't know that side at all. So it was very well hidden.
and that's what made it so, like, I think for me, from a social standpoint, that was the hardest thing I ever came across in my journey, because I felt like I had to put on this face. And then I started to have to start accepting that maybe I am really going to change from this. Maybe I'm not going to go back to that person. And then I started to think, and this is, by the way, everyone, this was a multi-year process. I didn't just wake up one day and be like, oh, I'm okay with being because I still have those bursts in me where I can get very hyper and be very excited. But my baseline is so much lower. The way I speak, how I conversate, that's territory of the recovery. And I thought that was bad. Because in
Mm,
my mind, I viewed like how Momin's personality, I viewed that as, oh, boring, not exciting, missing out on life. That's
mm,
just something society has peddled. But then once I got to where I am now, I realized that, wow, this actually there's a lot of terrific benefits in living a life that's much more just calm and living very almost underneath the surface. But then
And
the last,
also, like,
real
I
quick
have,
moment, let me just have
sorry,
one thing so I don't lose my train of
yeah.
thought, because this is what I wanted to bring it to, was the piece of that made me the most scared. I've never talked about this in a video, I don't think ever, was that's because I realized if I talked about every single aspect of my OCD, this is a learning lesson for many people. There are a lot of things you don't have to bring everything up on the calls, because then you'll think you have to solve every problem. There's things you could be like, maybe I could try to figure this out on my own. It's not the end of the world. When I would talk to people, it almost is if I would shut down internally. And then I would like almost come across as stupid. And that scared the shit
Mm,
out of me, because I'm like, no, like, no. Like, why can't I speak? Like, I'm the smart guy. Like, I'm a spoken person. And I never brought that up to Rob, and I never brought that up to Erica. And I think this might be the first time I've ever said that. But I'm like, I have to get comfortable with changing completely.
yeah.
That was a hard one for me.
And I
For it was
think, I mean, again, it comes down to how much you attach a certain sense of identity to it. I think, like, same for me, by the way. I mean, there were so many aspects of my daily life and my life structure that I didn't feel like I needed to bring up in one-to-one calls. I just, like, on the go, I kind of realized, oh, this is also maybe low frustration tolerance or fear, or maybe a little contamination element over here. So I just like, do what I know needs to be done, whether it's an exposure, whether it's pushing myself, whether it's like doing
exactly.
anything, whatever it is. And I did that anyway. And I think that, again, just to bounce off of like the real talk that I did yesterday with Sam, it's the same that like your social life does take a big toll, or you generally like relationships in life take a big toll, right? Like husbands and wives get distant with each other if like one of them is really suffering, right? Or one of them is really like we've had like people come in and they say that my partner is like, contemplating a divorce from me because it's so difficult to live with me. You have that with
Erica almost
contamination
left
OCD
me.
sufferers. Yeah, same with you,
Yeah,
like, on the brink
yeah.
of divorce. You see that with contamination OCD sufferers as well, where the one like partner is putting like a list of rules on the other person of like what to do and what not to do. You see the same with like a harm OCD or POCD sufferers who isolate themselves, who don't stop going out, who stop meeting friends or family, who put the pause button on having children, who put the pause button on, like even intimacy in many ways. And there's so
Promotions
many
at
reasons.
work, traveling,
Absolutely.
anything that could bring along a sense of my life might change from this. That's
Yeah.
where people get the most scared.
And
Yeah.
I think the scary part is I mean, not the scary part, but like at times the sneaky part of it is that these changes don't happen overnight. It's not like one day you have this like full thriving life and tomorrow you're like, okay, I'm not going to get out of bed for like the next 2 years. It's not like that. It's a very gradual day by day process of like one day you think, today, this weekend, I don't feel like going out to meet my friends because I know around them my harm thoughts will be super high. So I'm just going to put that off. It's that one weekend. And that I was saying to someone on the call the other day, I was like, you have to view compulsions as this portal back into suffering. So
Yes.
when you start doing
Well, I like
compulsions,
that.
you open up that portal, you're sucked into it, and then you're like, in this world of like constantly calculating and in constant fear and anxiety. So like your social life, your relationships, realistically, they take a toll. People who are constantly confessing about having cheating thoughts or like having being attracted to other women or having like incest OCD or something like obviously their partner is like after constantly hearing it over and over and over and over and over again for like a year or 2 years or 3 years, eventually that takes a toll on the relationship. So I mean that is how realistically this disorder works.
And I could tell you about some of the other ones too, that like when it comes to body dysmorphia or body image related fears, like to give someone that maybe someone hasn't gotten to the point yet where they're not socializing, but they're still going out. But then your experience of going out is completely altered in every way. So, like, I work with numerous people. This was myself. if a couple of them watch this, they'll laugh because they'll be like, yep, this is what we always talk about. Your perception of mirrors and windows and reflective surfaces to check, like, to see how you're looking is brought you so far away from the present moment. And I know a lot of people watch our content and they say, like, oh, I get this a lot. Well, you and Rob and Momin, you guys always say, like, the present moment doesn't matter. I said, yeah, we've never said that. We said that what happens is you're trying to grab the present moment like smoke. So, and that's why, like right now on this call right now, I'm literally, Daisy is beneath my feet and I'm scratching her with my left hand. You could easily be like, you're not 100% present on this call, but that's not how it works. Because you could be like, there's a person that could be doing the biggest business or career deal of their life, but maybe their mother is dying of cancer. So the person across the table for them is like, all right, sign the contract. Here's X amount of millions of dollars. And they're like, yes. And I'm like, oh crap, I gotta go to my mom's chemo tonight. Like this is the
I
reality of
think if
life.
you even if I hyperfixate on like this present moment, there are other things I'm thinking about.
Totally.
But I mean, like it's but and of course OCD will fixate on that and be like, no, I need to be present. But when you kind of stop caring about that, that's where you kind of do become present, ironically, much like a lot of things. In like when you let go of control is when those things
I
actually.
literally have said this. It's so interesting, especially I've never heard, I like how this is what's so unique about all of us. We have these unique ways of explaining, like when I say compulsions, I say it from my background of all the stuff I've done. I said, look, you got to treat compulsions like it's heroin. If you don't
Mm,
treat it, if you don't see it. I love how you called it a portal, because I know for myself, when I would fall back into body dysmorphia compulsions, just looking in the mirror, it did not matter if I wasn't doing like extra checking. It could just be like a morning mirror to brush my teeth with my shirt off.
yeah.
That would bring this massive wave of anxiety. But when compulsions were stopping and I wasn't even directly working on beliefs because they are correlated, that would come down so much. So, like,
Mm,
that is this is why we talk so much about, because another thing that I hear is, well, how do I handle, it's like when I go out somewhere, I can't even imagine what contamination OCD, because yours is probably on another level. They're like, well, how do I handle if I'm going to work and I have this ritual of compulsions?
oh,
Like that is literally how OCD takes a basic experience of going to Starbucks and getting coffee and makes it into, like, it's almost as if you're looking at a battlefield and you're like, okay, are we going to go to the left to the cavalry? Like, are we going to go straight to the middle? Like, there's cannonball fire or machine gun fire. Like, that's truly how it feels to just
yeah.
walk down the street.
No, no, 100%. Like I remember this one time because I like really, it came to a point where I calculated my movement enough that my compulsions would be at like at the very minimum at work, right? Because I was like, I can't afford to be in the bathroom for like an hour counting, okay, have I like, is this like the 50th time or is this like the 49th time that I washed my hand, right? So like, but this one time, I'm forgetting what it was, but something happened and I was in the bathroom for like an extra time, and I never spent like extra time in the bathroom at work ever. Like the max I ever did was to like, after food, your hands are dirty, you just go to wash them and that's all. Or so, and that was one day where I remember someone asked me, they were like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, yeah, I'm okay. Like, I mean, what could I say to them? Like, what was I doing? Just like counting the amount of times I'm washing. But that is what I was doing. But that was just the one time where something happened where like I had I had to do the compulsion and
And it is sad when that's happening. Like, I've had times where, especially when I first got some of the exposures from Rob, when I was in the gym, I remember, I think I've told this story before. I was on the squat rack and I had this bar on my back, and I am legitimately full on crying because I was so scared. And there's 4 squat racks, and I could just see the guy's face. He's like trying not to look, because like he probably was like, did he lose a child? Like, why is this guy full blown
Yeah.
crying in the gym?
Yeah.
But it just goes to show you that's how it infiltrates everything. So like, I think, if you're watching this video and you're kind of in that, like, I don't like using stages, but let's be very frank. If you're under a year, you're in the beginning. I hate to say it like that. You are for
Yeah.
most people.
Yeah.
And if you're just coming in for your first call, and this is always tough to break it to people on the call, right? Because you don't want to break anyone's heart when they see like that initial boost of happiness
Yeah.
from understanding. You don't want to shut anyone down and say, hey, look, that's not real. You're going to have a relapse in 13 seconds from now, but they have to learn on their own.
Mhm.
But in that first year, this is why I put so much emphasis on my calls. I'm sure as Momin does as well, is unless life structure is improving, your beliefs know. Like they like mine knew. They were like, yeah, sure, you might be accepting this to a degree, but you're still sleeping in 4 hours later. You're still not doing those things. You're still not going out to parties. Like yesterday was a great example where I know this would have never happened 3 years ago. I wouldn't have been working this long anyway, but let's just use it for an example. I did a bunch of one-to-ones, a bunch of the daily stuff I had to do. I went to the gym early, and then I forgot that Erica's friend had a birthday party at like 7:30 at night
Mhm.
after being up since 5 a.m. And I'm like, any other time in my life, I would have been like, oh shit. Like I'd rather just, but I was like, let's do it. And I threw on like a pair of jeans I hadn't worn in a while. We went there, and I actually got so lost in conversation that I'm like, oh crap, we were only going to stay here for 45 minutes. And almost been like an hour and a half. And I'm
Mhm.
like, but that goes to show you just how much you're over analyzing automatically and not automatically. It's a
Yeah.
mixture of both.
Yeah.
By like, oh my gosh, no, I can't do that. Like when you have OCD and you're suffering, every hour of your day is being tracked in ways that you can't. You're like 6 more hours till I get to take a shower and go to bed, right? Like, oh my gosh, like you're unless you're really struggling with sleep fears, people are looking as the bedroom. I mean, I hear this every day. It's the saddest thing. Yeah, when I'm sleeping, it's the only time I have peace.
Yeah.
So it's no
Yeah.
wonder why they're like, oh my God, just an extra 45 minutes.
And I think what I really want to highlight with like some of the things that you have mentioned is also that when you're suffering with OCD, um, whether you are someone who has completely isolated themselves or you're someone who has a really good semblance of a life of going out and meeting people but still internally suffering because you see both those things, right? Um, like there are pockets, at the very least, there are pockets where you do become an unpleasant personality. And I think the reason
Yeah.
it's important to highlight that is because I think a lot of people are also resisting even acknowledging that they have become an unpleasant personality. They don't want to see that. They just want to get better with like from like internally suffering with anxiety and panic and fear. But they don't want to acknowledge the fact that they are making a lot of times they're making the experience of hanging out with them like not that great. And that can be like being more mopey, as you said. That can be just being more of a complainer. That can be being someone who just like talks about like is very cynical or talks about negative things a lot. um Someone who has a poor life structure but still like complains and has entitlement of like why is life not happening to me. Someone who lashes out quite frequently. Someone who is irritable quite a lot. Someone who does not have a sense of humor. That like if a topic around, I mean, I don't know, let's say someone makes a joke about cancer, for example, and that person has health OCD, immediately they just like are like, why the fuck would you joke about something so serious, kind of thing, right?
That's such a great point. I've never actually thought about it like that, the seriousness of joking. That's actually a very good tail sign to see how someone's acceptance is. And we do understand because they're probably, and I've actually spent so much time thinking about this. Like I would be like, okay, well, Tony Robbins has to work with obviously all over the world, but there's no way he works on a moment to moment basis. Like I could have a 6 hour window, as we know, and I could be in 5 countries in 6 hours. Like it's very unique in that way. Let me open the door for
Yeah,
Daisy
yeah.
so she stops talking. Come here. Look, look.
Hey guys, welcome to
she's
OCD
like
Real
she's
Talk
like
with
staring at me, Moby. She's
just
like
me.
this. Yo, such a brat. So, like when it comes to making jokes and everything, we do understand that there are certain
There are jokes that
cultures.
can be made in bad taste. I mean, or the timing sometimes is just, I
Totally.
mean, you can't go on at a funeral and make a joke about deaths. Like sometimes like it's just like bad timing.
Exactly. Yes. It depends on obviously like and this is why another thing I think that people kind of because we don't talk about it that much. So I definitely have heard this in the years. Like, oh, you guys put no merit on childhood trauma. That's not true. Like like I was raised by a mother who was raised by two alcoholics who my mom only knew how to be in that fight or flight anger mode. So that was passed down to me. So I very much acknowledge that. But the difference is like when you look at how I would joke around in this is was such a it's so crazy you brought this up. I remember Erica being like, you like don't laugh anymore. Like
Mm.
you don't like there's no like I don't if I joke with you, you're just like, okay. Where before, like, I mean, I took a selfie with my dad's corpse for God's sakes. I literally, he was about to be cremated, and I took a selfie with him. And I said it to my friend, and I remember being in school, and they're like, "You are such a fucked up person, dude." I was like, but that's how my comedy
Yeah.
was in my
I
mind.
remember like we took a family trip to Malaysia in 20 I think it was 2019, right? And and I was genuinely enjoying. I'm not, I mean, there were obviously a lot of triggers here and there, like contamination and like, you know, it was there. I'm not denying that. But I was also enjoying the change of environment and like things like that. But my face was completely like expressionless and like poker face, right? And so like me and my siblings, we did what do you call it? Paragliding, right? And
Nice.
you know, and so like they were like, you know, very expressive and woo and like doing things like that, and I was just like
I'm just imagining your face, like a group of people, like everyone's like this, and then you just see the moment.
yeah, exactly. And so and like or when we were at the beach, they were like super like enjoying putting their like, you know, and they were like there were exclamations coming out of them, right, of like putting their feet in the warm water, getting wet and splashes and whatnot. And I'm just like, oh yeah, this is fun. Like, but I was experiencing so, but my sister said to me, like, she was like, I feel like you're not even enjoying this trip. Like, what's wrong with you? And I'm like, no, I am enjoying. She's like, no, but your like face is just like this all the time. And so, but I get that because like
Yeah.
from like year after year of like in the same rut of just like emotionlessness and being completely numb,
Yes.
it's almost like your body also automatically forgets how to express emotions as well, or like even emote. And so even when I was enjoying, like it just felt like I was completely like emotion, like I had no emotions about what was happening.
And the best way I've always said this from like a communication conversation standpoint, going back to like that very first point about explaining things to a 3-year-old, in order to get someone to understand if this is just a tip or trick for anyone who works with people, if you can say things in your field that makes them like a shock factor, but it's not in the sense of overblowing it because there's truth in this. Like I would say to people, what me and Momin are talking about is every person can understand. When I said this to Erica, I think she at first was very scared but then she's like, I guess that makes sense. But I remember specifically, I was in a very bad spot, like always. And I said, look, Erica, I could literally watch a family be murdered in front of me. And I don't even know if I would shed a tear because I was so like, call it being primal. Like my body was like,
Yeah,
your goal is to stay alive
yeah.
and nothing else. It's like when you're in a war zone. I'm imagining like if you're in a war zone about to die, your brain does not do this. Are you hungry? I could go for some pizza right now. No, it's like
Absolutely.
it shuts everything else down
I mean,
because it
like,
doesn't.
I
Yeah,
could be watching the news about like an entire family being murdered by a gang or something, And in my mind, and this has happened like countless times, by the way,
Oh yeah.
to the point that I can't even point out like a specific example. It's happened that many times that I'd be like, oh, I can't be sitting on this chair and I probably have to like change my clothes and throw these in the laundry because this chair is contaminated. I would be completely removed from it because in like that's a really good way of because you're in constant 24/7 survival mode. Like it's like constantly darting like triggers and fear and like you're constantly trying to be like how can I be okay on every single level? And so you completely become shut out to the rest of the world.
That's the other thing too is I think this is a great transition when it comes to this will go for everyone who's not in a relationship right now, which is, it's a 50-50 split. You're either in one or you're not, but we obviously work. I can have a 8 session day where no one's in a relationship. And, me and Momin that both have our own, struggles slash journeys when it comes to adult websites. And I could tell you this flat out. One of the biggest social mistakes is not using the action of going on dates. Like I tell people,
Yeah.
think about how many barriers you're breaking down by going on a date. You're facing your fears of socializing, actual rejection. Like I tell people, when you pick your phone up and someone swipes no, that's not rejection.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
you need the face-to-face rejection. And then like learning how to like, I know it sounds funny, but geez, man, my manners, I had no manners when I was suffering. I didn't care who saw me doing what. Like, so when you go on a date with a person, you got the fear of rejection, fear of looking stupid, having to present yourself from a clothing perspective. Like you're doing all these life skills in one event that so many people miss out on because we see this, especially with how integrated. I mean, I think I was seeing that, adult websites have been found now. It's like average, it's like 9 years old. So if you're a kid that grew up with this and you've been watching it for 10
Yeah.
years, you have forgotten how to communicate with whoever you're going after. And I see this on a daily basis with that
Yeah.
18 to 25-year-old population. I'm like, look, set yourself a goal of 2 dates a month, no matter what. What if I'm not attracted to them? Just make an excuse to go.
Yeah.
Just make an excuse to go. And you'll learn a lot from that. I mean, you,
No,
you really do learn from going on dates. You really
no,
do.
100. I think so. I mean, I was watching this video of this who this and it was showing up on my Explorer. I don't like follow these kind of people or anything, but like he was a love coach or something. So and someone had asked him like how do I don't know how do I meet people because it's difficult to meet people, something like that. And he was like, you do realize there was a life out there in dating before dating apps as well. Like dating apps is what
Yes.
the last 10 years maybe, like and especially in the last I would say maybe 6 7 years where it has like really really taken on. So like people what did people do like since mankind began is like going up to someone and saying, hey, I want to go out on a date with you or I want to have sex with you, whatever it is. And so and that really made me laugh as when I was like this like that's so like that makes so much sense because and it's such a common sensible thing as well because like going up to like that's basically what humans did for the longest time, but now it's so accepted to date just via dating apps or even like forget like dating, even communication as well. Like often people would be like, no, it's I feel too anxious being on a phone call, like I would rather communicate with you via text. And that's also where communication breaks down. You lose your ability to exercise that muscle of communication with people. And it's a skill that and that's where also cutting out friends or isolating yourself because of OCD and triggers, it really starts to um make that muscle of socializing and like talking to other people and like verbally in person going off of their gestures and cues and things like that. You miss out on that, and it's something if you're like a few years into like becoming very reclusive, it's going to take a good while for you to jump back into that mode of
Oh yeah.
feeling like now it's normal again for me to speak to people and strangers and
I would
friends.
I would say for me it was probably like to really feel as if I was comfortable in the sense where if I had like a anxiety or OCD like attack while I was conversating with someone, it was probably like a 2 to 3 year period. Like I remember a year into a year and a half, I still had that like I just don't feel like myself, and then that's where all those fears of like I want to go backwards. Then I had to remember like I don't want to go back to that person, but like I just want to give someone an idea of this is something else I probably don't talk about a lot that would probably help people to show you how every individual is different. So when people ask me like are going back to alcohol, smoking weed, alcohol, pornography, those are the ones where I'm like, it is a case by case person. You have a spectrum. We have people who don't drink, complete alcoholics, kind of bingers, but like they could stop, compulsive users, social drinkers, non-drinkers. It's the same thing. And that's for everything. So when people are like, well, for yourself, when it comes to like habits and everything, like how strict are you when it comes to like the adult websites? I'm like, well, let me give you an example for myself. This probably doesn't need to happen, but when I talk to people about my background, one time Erica, and she wouldn't mind me sharing this because we're married and we talk about this for like, you know, and I'd be like, hey, can I share stuff to help people? She was like, would you like me? This is like only like a year ago. Like, would you want me to almost do like I remember she said like a lingerie photo shoot for you? And I'm like, and I also, with Erica, I do zero texting, sexual, anything with my wife. Think about what I'm saying here. People go, well, it's your wife. I say, but what you don't understand is my brain doesn't go, it's not like Osmosis Jones, like the movie. It doesn't go, well, this is your wife. So it's not near the addiction.
Yeah.
It just goes sexual texting and photos of a girl. And I know my brain. And that makes my addiction just go like this. Yep. So it's like, people think they're just going to go out. And I know this is hard to hear. People are like, well, I'm going to go out, I'm going to conversate, and all my habits are going to fall into place. No chance. It is like a multi-year learning process of like what's going to work for you and what's really not going to work for you. Because there are a lot of people that say to me, hey, I smoke a couple joints a couple times a month. Do you think I have to cut that? And we kind of dive into it. I'm like, no, let's just keep it for now and see how you do. But maybe we do 10 calls over a year. And I'm noticing it's going from a couple joints a month to like 5, 6 joints a month. Then I have to say something. Or maybe someone just goes, I don't want to smoke weed anymore. I'm too engaged in life. But these are all the things that if you're not careful and you go on YouTube, you're going to hear one of two things. Either smoking weed's the best thing in life and everyone needs to do it, or if you smoke weed, you're a degenerate scumbag and your life's going to come to an end. It's like there's no, and there's this big middle area that's just certainly not.
Moderation, I think, like, is not, first of all, it's not an OCD sufferer's best suit, and most of your peace and calmness is in moderation with things. With most things. I'm not saying that as a blanket statement.
Of
But
course.
also in society in general as well, you're right about it. You put in any topic and like it'll either be like a full-on kind of response or just like nope. So there's no like
Yeah.
middle ground with like a lot of topics. So and that's that's very
It's like
difficult.
hallucinogenics right now. And by the way, we do have to, I actually think it's a good thing to end it on because I'm not sure how much you get this moment, but I just want to be very, very frank on our position because I get asked this a lot. Momin, me, Rob, we don't recommend psilocybin or tripping on acid because I know a lot of people are like, oh, well, this is the future. You have to understand that do we think that the future could be involved with these compounds? Maybe, sure, probably. Rob knows a lot about this because he's done a lot of study on this.
Yeah.
But the reality is you guys need to be very careful. And I don't mean this to scare you. I have worked with in 2023 alone, just last year, I must have had 25 different people that have said this moment. I'm sure you've seen this. I took an edible or I took shrooms, and then I went into DPDR, and I've been stuck for 3 years. So you need to be careful in what you think you're doing. And I know we're always looking for a shortcut as OCD sufferers because our suffering is so high, but the principles work. You just have to allow them to work long term.
Yeah.
And I know that's not what you want to hear. And this goes back into everything we're talking about. Like, is there anything inherently wrong? I met my wife on a dating app, so I can't be like, oh, they're useless.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the reality is, going up to someone in the grocery store, I mean, this would bring anyone really a sense of like, oh crap. Like, hey, like, I think you're really cute. Would you like to go on a date? Like, that is not easy. I
Yeah.
don't care how confident you think you are. So the way that you build these habits, or you're going to have to get much more uncomfortable than you think. And
No.
I think that's the only way to do it.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's a good way to also cap off this video as well, because we both have to go to calls after this. But like, I mean, essentially, like it will come down to your beliefs that you do have to work on. But also, I mean, like even in terms of like some of the more logistical and practical aspects of your life, in terms of isolating yourself and like not meeting people, not going out and things like that, you will have to make that extra actionable step and
Yes.
effort to be able to do that, because otherwise you won't just get your life back in a silver plate. You really have to, in that sense, like work hard and earn it back.
Yeah, no. And Momin, that was awesome. It was great being on the Real Talk with you. Pete,
Yeah,
let's do another one of these in a couple weeks, like around the same time. We'll just pick the date.
sure.
Um,
Just
when
let me
we
know.
put this, if you guys have made it to the end of the video, hopefully you have, right below what you want to see me and Momin specifically cover,
Yeah.
that you think with all the coaching that we do, maybe like, oh, common things that you guys see a lot. Then we can kind of go through and answer questions like a Q&A, and then we can go from there.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thanks for waking up early and thanks for being
Awesome, Momin. I need to get that sweater. I need that.
here. Okay.
I
I'll
like
meet
how
you in the
does that
coffee.
me and Momin say bye.
Bye.
See you guys later.